In an earlier video, insert link here, I mentioned the anniversary of the publication of John G. Fuller's book, Aliens in the Skies, in which he exposes the failures of Edward Condon, Donald Menzel, and the United States Air Force. By page 8, he has reminded his reader of the leaked memo from CU's Assistant Dean Robert Lowe, in which Lowe stated,
"The trick would be, I think, to describe the project so that, to the public, it would appear to be a totally objective study, but, to the scientific community, would present the image of a group of non-believers trying their best to be objective but having an almost zero expectation of finding a saucer." I'm inclined to feel at this early stage that, if we set up the thing right and take pains to get the proper people involved and have success in presenting the image we want to present to the scientific community, we could carry off the job to our benefit.
Next, he documents his February 1966 encounter with Donald Menzel on the NBC panel discussion program, Open Mind. I have assembled a video annotated version of this program's audio in tribute to John Fuller's effort, and away we go.
Free to examine, to question, to disagree. The subject of today's discussion are flying saucers only science fiction. The moderator of the Open Mind is Eric F. Goldman, professor of history at Princeton University and author of Rendezvous with Destiny and The Crucial Decade. To introduce the topic and guest for this week, here is Mr. Goldman.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We live, of course, in the space age, and since 1947 at least, that space age has been characterized by thousands of reports of unidentified objects in the air, flying saucers, as they are popularly called, or UFOs, unidentified flying objects, as they are known in more scientific circles. The responsibility for investigating these reports rests with a branch of the Air Force located in Ohio. And this official agency states that there is no persuasive evidence that genuine flying objects from another planet exist. But the popular belief in them in some quarter goes on and perhaps mounts. Very recently, a good many people around Exeter, New Hampshire, became very sure that something quite genuine was in our air. Well, the Open Mind is open-minded about this subject too, and a panel to discuss it, here to my far left, Mr. R. Leo Sprinkle, Assistant Professor of Psychology at the University of Wyoming. Here to my immediate left, Mr. John G. Fuller, author, journalist, and columnist for the Saturday Review, who has been engaged in extensive research into that alleged flying saucer episode in Exeter, New Hampshire. Here to my immediate right, D.H. Menzel, Director of Harvard College's Observatory. Next to Professor Menzel, Frank B. Salisbury, Professor of Plant Physiology at Colorado State University, much of whose research concerns possible life on Mars. And to my far right, Mr. J. A. Hynek, Chairman of the Astronomy Department and Director of the Linheimer Astronomical Research Center at Northwestern University. Mr. Menzel, Mr. Fuller has written about this particular Exeter, New Hampshire episode in the current Look magazine, and he concludes his account, after having told what this, that, and the other person has said, by saying, confidential comments made to me by Coast Guardsmen and military in the area support the layman's testimony and confirm the reports even of radar sightings and of scrambling by jet fighters. Collusion, hoax, or mistaken identity by so many people seems improbable. The continued official silence surrounding the subject of UFOs seems as mysterious as the Exeter story itself.
I haven't noticed any particular silence about the subject. The Exeter sightings seem pretty much run-of-the-mill to me, and as I've looked over the reports, both the official reports and the unofficial ones that you're referring to, I have found that the pattern is very similar to those in the many thousands of cases that I have examined in the Air Force files.
And you state in your book, The World of Flying Saucers, you state flatly, now that was up to 1963 when you published that.
That's right.
No fact so far determined suggests that a single unidentified flying object has originated outside our own planet, and that is your opinion as of 66 still.
That is correct, yes.
I was going to ask Dr. Menzel a question. I went up to Exeter for 24 days. I interviewed 60 people. I tape recorded 70 hours of tape. I cross-examined these people. I did not just interview them. I threw questions at them that would try to throw them off. I tried to disprove this. Now, were you up there in Exeter, Dr. Menzel, to investigate this?
No, I was not.
Well, why weren't you up there if you're so interested in it?
Because I don't have time to investigate every one of the cases, and I can ask you the same question about many of the other cases. You seem to have concentrated on this Exeter case.
I never had any experience with the UFOs before, but I did go up there with an open mind to try to examine, if necessary. If I could disprove it, I would have been glad to. But this was such a startling case in that the police officers who were involved with this cited it at below treetop level and watched it for 8 or 9 minutes while the two of them checked each other out, and 3 other civilians reported the same phenomenon within the hour and within a distance of, say, 6 miles.
I believe you said that the object was seen at a distance of 100 feet. Is that?
The initial sighting was below treetop level. Now, the trees were estimated to be at 70 feet. It came up behind those trees and then moved toward them and hovered 100 feet in the air. You're right, 100 feet in that case.
Did any of you other gentlemen read Mr. Fuller's piece, or do you know the facts of the accident? I read it today, yes.
I read it also.
Would you comment, sir?
I was very impressed. It would seem to me that this would be the kind of a sighting that ought to be thoroughly investigated, because, and I'd like to hear Dr. Menzel's ideas about how it's run-of-the-mill. It seemed to me that it was not run-of-the-mill, that there was enough detail involved that it's pretty hard to imagine, the planet Venus or a weather balloon or something like that, the usual explanations which must fit many of these sightings. I was tremendously impressed by the reproducibility almost, which you imply here. The one young lad went and sat out on the mountainside till he saw it again with his mother, and here would have been a chance for the Air Force or whoever was interested to move in and perhaps do something really scientific for a change instead of studying it after the fact, as we otherwise always have to do.
This is what I feel.
Well, by run-of-the-mill, I meant the disagreement between the two observers, the two police officers. One of them said 100 feet, and that seems to be the person that you have quoted. But the other one said 9,000 feet away and possibly 2 to 3 miles. Well, and this is in exactly the same place in the official report.
Well, now, Dr. Menzel, could I say this? I tape recorded the 2 policemen on the spot, and I had them reenact everything that went on. He did not say 9,000 feet. He said it was just immediately over the trees when the second policeman, Patrolman David Hunt, arrived. Now, in the official report from the Air Force, do you recall how they explained this?
Explained what?
How they explained this sighting, the Air Force, what the official Air Force report was?
This is very close to an Air Force base, and I know that there was some operation in the neighborhood. Dr. Heineck, I think, would be, who's investigated the case more closely than I, would be able to...
The Air Force reported it as Operation Big Blast, a high-altitude exercise from Westover Field, Massachusetts, between the hours of 12 midnight and 2 a.m. on September 2nd, 1964. The sighting took place on September 3rd, 1964, at 3 a.m. 65, I'm sorry, I apologize on that. Now, the Air Force, the 2 policemen, when they got this report from the Air Force, and when it was released to the local papers, were furious. They wrote 2 letters to Major Quinton Miller of the Wright-Patterson Air Defense Command Foreign Technology Division, and they asked him to please immediately write and withdraw this report because it implied that they had no sensibilities, that they were incapable of discerning the difference between a plane or a planet or a high-altitude exercise. Patrolman Bertrand was in the Korean War for 4 years. He refueled from KC-97 tankers. He knew every plane not only by sight but by sound. He knew helicopters. He attempted to place this object within the category of conventional aircraft. He did everything he could to it. When David Hunt arrived, about 4 to 5 minutes after Lieutenant Bertrand incidentally threw himself on the ground and began to pull his gun because the thing came so close to them, Lieutenant Bertrand did everything he could to rule out the possible things. The three of them, an 18-year-old boy, Patrolman David Hunt, Patrolman Eugene Bertrand, sat there for between 8 and 9 minutes and tried to rule everything out. Now, the Pentagon, after the second letter arrived from these policemen, the Pentagon, as of yesterday, finally wrote to Eugene Bertrand and David Hunt and apologized because they could not identify this object. Now, I want to get these facts absolutely straight.
Now, excuse me, let me get this straight. As of this letter, the position of the official agency having to do with is that they do not have this one explained. So
now they don't, but they first explained it.
The first statement was that they did explain it.
It was all the persistence of these two policemen which made them withdraw their explanation.
Mr. Honey, would you come in here, please?
Yes, I spent 2 days last week at Wright Field on this case, and one thing immediately rules out the big blast operation, that is that all the planes from that were down by 1:35.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And this was due to some misunderstanding earlier. The Pentagon office had not the exact times on the sighting, and this was pointed out, and I called Lieutenant Brandt, who had been one of the men from Pease Air Force Base, to come down, and certainly from the manner in which they reported it, I don't see, in this case, at least, how it could have been B-47.
No, they ruled that out. I mean, yeah. they saw B-47 and compared it. Yeah.
It's rather interesting. I should say, Mr. Goldman, that although I've been the Air Force investigator, no, that's incorrect. I've been consultant to the Air Force for the last 18 years on this subject. I am not here this evening speaking before the Air Force, but as an astronomer.
As an astronomer.